when
Sure.
Republicans are moving forward, they know they've got to shore up support between some key voting blocs. Number one among them is women. And tonight, Megan Kelly came out firing with a tough question for Donald Trump on his stand against women. Let's play it here.
Mr. Trump, one of the things people love about you is you speak your mind and you don't use a politician's filter. However, that is not without its downsides, in particular when it comes to women. You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
No, it wasn't. Your Twitter account.
Thank you.
For the record, it was well beyond Rosie O'Donnell.
Yes, I'm sure it was.
Your Twitter account has several disparaging comments about women's looks. You once told a contestant on Celebrity Apprentice it would be a pretty picture to see her on her knees. Does that sound to you like the temperament of a man we should elect as president? And how will you answer the charge from Hillary Clinton, who is likely to be the Democratic nominee, that you are part of the war on women?
I think the big problem this country has is being politically correct. I've been challenged by so many people, and I don't frankly have time for total political correctness. And to be honest with you, this country doesn't have time either. This country is in big trouble. We don't win anymore. We lose to China. We lose to Mexico, both in trade and at the border. We lose to everybody. And frankly, what I say, and oftentimes it's fun, it's kidding, we have a good time, what I say is what I say. And honestly, Megan, if you don't like it, I'm sorry. I've been very nice to you, although I could probably maybe not be based on the way you have treated me, but I wouldn't do that. But you know what? We need strength, we need energy, we need quickness, and we need brain in this country to turn it around. That I can tell you right now.
Nancy Cordes joins me on the set. How do you think that female voters across this nation might take that?
Not well. You know, I think that the problem for him is that this is something that probably a lot of people weren't quite aware of, the way that he has spoken specifically about women. And so what did he do when confronted with it? First of all, he said, oh, it's all in great fun. We're just kidding. Well, I'm sure the women who he described that way
he doubled down
didn't
on it.
feel
Like,
that way.
Calling out one woman when you're talking about pigs, dogs, and slobs, using her name on national television. And by the way, Rosie O'Donnell tweeted out afterwards.
Try explaining that to your kids.
How do you explain that to little kids?
Yeah.
Part of what is making him appealing right now, I think, is he's got a point about people being sick of being politically correct.
Right.
They feel like they can't say anything without offending someone, and so let's just throw it all away. But in this case, is that going to backfire, Mike?
It will probably backfire on Donald Trump. I'm not convinced it's going to backfire on Republicans. Peggy Noonan wrote something several weeks ago in the Wall Street Journal that I think is really smart to remember when Trump does things like this. Trump's brand is bigger than the Republican brand. It's separate from the Republican brand. People know that he's kind of a jerk about things like this. He's kind of been a jerk to women in the past. So it's going to reflect poorly on him when people remember, oh yeah, that was really nasty when he went that back and forth with Rosie O'Donnell about 10 years ago. I don't think it really has anything to do with the way the Republican Party is going to be perceived among women, because people don't really see Donald Trump and the Republican Party as the same thing. That would obviously change if he becomes the nominee, but for now, I think this is a big problem for Trump. Not so much for the rest of the Republicans.
We've seen Trump be willing to engage in bar brawls, so to speak. But what we saw tonight on stage were several other candidates willing to engage as well. We saw a really great exchange that had to do with Governor Chris Christie and Senator Rand Paul, and I want to play part of that.
Governor Christie, you have said that Senator Paul's opposition to the NSA's collection of phone records has made the United States weaker and more vulnerable, even going so far as to say that he should be called before Congress to answer for it if we should be hit by another terrorist attack. Do you really believe you can assign blame to Senator Paul just for opposing the bulk collection of people's phone records in the event of a terrorist attack?
When you actually have to be responsible for doing this. You can do it, and we did it for 7 years in my office, respecting civil liberties and protecting the homeland. And I will make no apologies ever for protecting the lives and the safety of the American people. We have to give more tools to our folks to be able to do that, not fewer, and then trust those people and oversee them to do it the right way. As president, that is exactly what I'll do.
Megan, may I respond? May I respond?
Go ahead, sir.
I want to collect more records from terrorists, but less records from innocent Americans.
Listen, Senator, you know, when you're sitting in a subcommittee just blowing hot air about this, you can say things like that. When you're responsible for protecting the lives of the American people, then what you need to do is to make sure that you use the system the way it's supposed to work.
Here's the problem, Governor. You fundamentally misunderstand the Bill of Rights. Every time you did a case, you got a warrant from a judge. I'm talking about searches without warrants, indiscriminately of all Americans' records, and that's what I fought to end. I don't trust President Obama with our records. I know you gave him a big hug, and if you want to give him a big hug again, go right ahead.
Go ahead, Governor.
And you know, Senator Paul, you know, the hugs that I remember are the hugs that I gave to the families who lost their people on September 11th. Those are the hugs I remember, and those had nothing to do with politics, unlike what you're doing by cutting speeches on the floor of the Senate, then putting them on the internet within a half an hour to raise money for your campaign, and while still putting our country at risk.
What is this, a Republican war on hugs?
Exactly. Hey, you know, and there was no Trump involved. It was amazing. There was all kinds of fireworks and no Trump. This is a real debate that's been happening in the Republican Party. And frankly, it's one that Rand Paul's been kind of on the losing side of, really since the rise of ISIS and this feeling that maybe we're not as secure as we thought we were in these years since September 11th has passed. It was an interesting exchange. You heard both of them at the end getting a little personal. Christie, you know, sort of attacking Rand Paul for cutting speeches and making money off of them. That great hug dig that Rand Paul made. I think it was actually interesting and illuminating.
We knew that was going to come up. That was when President Obama, post Hurricane Sandy, came to New Jersey to see some of the damage.
It wasn't a hug, by the way, if I could set the record. It was more like an arm around the shoulders kind of thing, not quite a full.
It was a friendly gesture.
There were some people who were predicting that this would be actually the most likely brawl of the night was between Christie and Rand Paul, because they've been kind of duking it out on this issue for such a long time. But I think that this actually served both of their purposes, because it helped to remind Rand Paul's constituency that privacy is his #1 issue. That's kind of his calling card. That's how he sets himself apart. And for Christie, he gets to remind folks that he's tough on crime, that he's a former U.S. attorney, and that's something that makes him different, and also remind people that he's sort of this fighter, and you know that's what they liked about him before someone like Trump, who's even more bombastic, arrived on the scene.
And yet no quoting of the founding fathers about those who would trade liberty for security deserve neither.